Pop, what's going on, man?
Son, grinding.
Another
Just like
pod.
Jane Daniels at 4 a.m. at the Commander's facility.
Boys locked in. Maybe not quite like that, but same feelings here. We're locked
right.
in. We're getting to
Can't
it.
wait.
We are talking everybody's favorite PFF grades for free agency. Be interesting topic. We're going to talk across the NFC East. I've made no secret of it on our various platforms. I'm not the biggest fan of using PFF as a metric, so we're going to kind of debate it, go back and forth. It's a useful tool when you're talking, across the board. But we'll see how this thing goes in terms of how we feel about their grades. How you feel?
Yeah, just to help set this up, right? We sprinkled in a few other teams too, right? So we've sprinkled in a couple of other top NFC teams, and then our neighbors, Baltimore Ravens. So we'll talk a little bit about their free agency moves and the defending AFC champs, Kansas City Chiefs. So it's not just NFC East. Got a little bit more coverage. We can't go 32 teams deep because you'll be here all night. I'd be more than willing to do that once, somebody steps up and signs us to a big deal. But as of right now, we're going to sprinkle in a couple extra teams, but not the whole NFL.
You're not playing on a deal with no guaranteed money is just the bottom line. It's just how the league works,
Yeah.
So we're giving you what we're giving you. We're coming to camp. We're doing the workouts. But you want the 32-team breakdown, you got to pay for that. That's how this works.
Yeah. So, I mean, ESPN, Washington Commanders, Odyssey, Barstool, we're open for business.
Anybody. Just about. Anyways, let's get into it. So, Washington Commanders got an A- via PFF for their grades in terms of the guys that they brought back. Just kind of quickly going through: John Bates, Noah Brown, Jonathan Jones, Dietrich Wise Jr., Marcus Mariota, Will Harris, Laramie Tunsil, Javon Kinlaw, Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, Deebo Samuel are the highlights there. Guys like Noah Igbenogany got re-signed as well. But just going through those, the highlights are probably Bates getting that 3-year deal. That was a big one. Marcus Mariota coming back was important. And then Laramie Tunsil and the Deebo Samuel trades, both of which were big deals. And then I'd say the bringing Zach Ertz back and Wagner back as well were the big ones there. What do you make of all these signings, Pop? Is there anything? I mean, most of these grades are average. They said Bates was below average. I think it's probably because you signed him for 3 years, but I don't care about that.
I also think it's a lack of appreciation of what Bates does. That's my opinion there, right? I mean, he's a blocking tight end. He brings a lot to the offense. They obviously value what he brings to the table, but you can't grade him against the pass catching tight end.
So there's right off the bat. Here's some of my quandary with PFF is like, well, a tight end catches and blocks, and his catching rating is only 51.1 or whatever it was, but his run blocking rating was high, so we graded below average because tight ends do both. And it's like, well, first of all, he's not being paid like a tight end that does both, and second of all, he's not being asked to do both in this offense. And he does just enough on the pass catching where you got to respect him in a weird third down situation or on a play action or something like that. I've been the first one to be hypercritical of John Bates. After what I saw from him last season, I'm pretty high on this signing. So
I think
below average, I don't agree.
I mean, like you said, lots of averages here. If we go maybe to the ones that are not average, would be Will Harris. He got below average. I was surprised about that. Love to see him. We're kind of optimistic that Harris is going to be a better player. They really like the Laramie Tunsil signing. They've got that as elite. We agree. Another one that was one of our key defensive signings. They've got Javon Kinlaw's below average. They don't
Everybody
seem to love
has that right now.
They don't seem to love that. They love us bringing back Wagner at above average. So I think most others are average. They say Samuel is good, so I guess that's better than average. I don't know. Good against above average. But, we've broken down the Commanders offseason quite a bit. I think we'll probably, want to get into some of these other teams. But like you said, it's not a perfect science with PFF. Generally, I'm pretty pleased with a grade in the A range. We used to say Tenayas don't really like an A minus. We're kind of an A to A plus type crew, but we'll take an A minus. It's not bad.
Yeah, so if you look at the
A minus
Kinlaw,
indicates you've upgraded your roster, right? In my opinion. So
there you go. So if you look at the Kinlaw deal, it's really closer to 2 years, 2 years, 31 million than it is, and not even because the cap hit is about 25. Yeah, 25. The cap hit's 2 years, 25, $7.5 million cap hit this year, and then $18 million cap hit next year. And then you're only going to take on about $5 million in dead cap if you cut them the year after. So that's really pretty irrelevant if you do like a pre-June 1 cut or whatever it is. So it's really a 2-year grade, 2-year deal for 25 million. They projected 2 years, 18 million. So you overpaid by $7 million
I don't care about the
per
money.
PFF. $7 million is not even enough to get you a 35-year-old Bobby Wagner in today's NFL, so it doesn't really matter. Obviously, they don't love that signing, and I think this is definitely the more volatile of the signings. But if you look at the guys that they gave multiple year deals to last year in Biadish and Luvu, you didn't really miss on those, right? Was there a multi-year deal they gave out last year that you're not happy with at this point?
Well, and I think the point about I agree with you there. And I think the point about a Kinlaw is this. There is a bit of a gamble there, right? If you judge him based on his first 5 years in the NFL, now he had his best year, according to PFF. I'm not making that up last year. 4 disappointing years in the 49ers because of some injury. Logan Paulson talks about him and says he's an ascending player. So they obviously see something they like in a body type. He's a player they're familiar with from, both AP and with the 49ers and some of the coaching staff. So they're betting on this kid that he's ascending and that they can utilize him, and he's, got a skill set that they can really, leverage. So time will tell. I understand the grade if you're basing it on the last 5 years and that's all you've got to go on. They feel like this is an ascending player that they can tap into something that maybe we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth,
and I think he'll be a specialist in many ways, right? I don't see him being a 90% of the snaps type guy, right?
Yeah, and depending on how you sort it, he's kind of like he's around that like 18, 19 mark for defensive tackles paid across the NFL. So it looks like a big number, but not that big, in my opinion. If you do like overall value, he's 18. If you do average cap percentage at signing, he's tied for 18. Average salary, he's probably also 18.
I think we've probably killed the Kinlaw thing. I think the highlight here is an elite left tackle. That's the highlight. That's what's going to make a big difference to your team. That's the highlight. But let's get on to some of these other teams because you want to hear about the Commanders free agency class. We got a queue of podcasts where you'll hear everything you want to know about that. So just if you're not caught up, go back and check out the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, so the Dallas Cowboys got a C minus. We definitely give them an A plus around here, always. Jerry, you're doing great. Keep it up, man. Big Jerry Jones fans over here. I mean, there's
not much to talk about.
There's not much to talk about. I mean, the highlight is probably the Osa Odigizua re-signing. They spent quite a bit of money on him. He's a good player. We were hoping to get him over here. Didn't hit the market. This is another casualty of that $20 million increase in the cap at the last minute. Did some restructuring of Dak and CB's contracts to free up some space. Javonte Williams, I think, is fun. 1 year, $3 million. He's an interesting player.
But it's a lot of just guys, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it feels like reading through this list. It just doesn't feel Cowboy-esque, right? For marquee type players, you got. So anyway, it just a lot of averages to below average signings according to PFS. Nothing really jumps off the page here.
I just think it's indicative of this is looking like the Dallas situation just reminds me of the Washington situation prior to Josh Harris, where it's just like I just don't think at this point in time these guys, all that America's team stuff. Look, I'm the same age as a lot of these guys that are hitting free agents. The America's team stuff doesn't ring with my generation the way it rang with previous years, and the Cowboys have kind of been the butt of a joke for a long time. And even when they win games in the regular season, you just wait for them to choke in the playoffs. Questionable coaching decisions with going with Schottenheimer as head coach, getting rid of Mike McCarthy, who's a veteran guy that's had a track record of a lot of success, and that's your replacement. I don't think making a change is an issue, but that was your replacement. I think guys don't have any interest in playing for Dallas at this point, unfortunately. Next up, New York Giants. Now they get a B, and they spent a lot of money this free agency, and they made a lot of big, splashy signings. They brought back Darius Slayton for more money than they would have paid Saquon Barkley to come back.
I saw a video
so that
about
was
that.
Funny.
Giants fan, just that's crazy. Whoa.
It's a funny thing to laugh at. If I'm a Giants fan, I'm saying, well, wide receivers just cost more, and it's true, but that's a funny thing to laugh at.
Yeah.
And it's over at this point, so poor Giants fans. Otherwise, Javon Holland, he's a guy that was not on my radar for somebody I wanted the Commanders to address in terms of safety. I think his best game is behind him by a couple years at this point. I have not been a fan of what he's put on tape the last couple years, but once things started to matriculate out the way that they did with us losing Jeremy Chin and then Hafanga signing with Denver, who I think had one of the better free agency classes this year, Holland was a name that I was interested in, and I was wondering, well, maybe they can maybe they can rehabilitate him here in Washington. But yeah, I mean, that's a guy that his wins above replacement is .07. But you sign him to a $45 million deal is pretty crazy. Something we don't have on this outline that just happened, it was last night, I think, was Jameis Winston signed on like a 2-year deal loaded with a bunch of incentives for the Giants. So
your new
that one hurts my heart.
Starting quarterback for the New York Giants.
That one hurts my heart because I love me some Jameis Winston, but now I got to root against him.
Yeah,
for the Giants.
You can't hate the fact that he's their starter.
No. So
never met a turnover he didn't like.
Tell you
that's
what,
been I know he says he wants to work on it, but he used to throw for 300 plus yards, with the Bucs on the regular and 5 interceptions. So, I mean, our corners better be ready to go.
I want to work on being able to slam dunk too, but some things are just ingrained in our DNA, like I'm not going to be able to do it. Bring that rim down to 8.5. I'll hit you with a windmill, but 10 feet, no chance. I hate that Jameis Winston thing because I tell you what, he's the perfect with the way the Giants just torture us and make these games close and obnoxious. It's just like, because 3 games out of the year, Jameis Winston turns into the NFL MVP.
He can sling it.
And I just worry that 2 of them happen against us the way it goes with these division games against the Giants. And there might be 2 of their 5 wins. I tweeted out, I think Malik Neighbors is going to he's going to win the Triple Crown next year. But New York's also only going to win 5 games if Jameis starts every game.
So Jameis Winston, just as a reminder, led the NFL with 5,109 yards passing in 2019. How many picks did he throw? Trivia question.
40, 30, something like that?
30.
Yeah, 30. He had 30. No, because he had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions.
Has 111 career interceptions.
Good
luck, Giants fans.
Yeah. Jameis plays football like the Boston Insider plays Madden. It's just like the most incredible deep shot you've ever seen, and then he throws it right at the linebacker.
He was fun to watch. I mean, it was Tommy Cudlitz before they signed him. He was the only quarterback on the roster.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Drew Lock. If it weren't for Drew Lock turning into the second coming of Peyton Manning at the end of last season and putting up 45 points, you'd be talking about Cam Ward. But the Giants just – they're a lot of fun. Anyways, they got to be – there's not much on the Giants end that really excites me. I'd rather spend more time talking about like the Lions and more relevant teams. Prove me wrong, Giants fans. But Philadelphia Eagles, B minus. I think this B minus is more about the guys that they lost rather than the guys that they signed. Um, the thing that jumps off the page, the big signing is Zach Bond. So you had Zach Bond, Milton Williams, and Josh Sweat all kind of in this gray area of who's going to come back. You probably can't keep all of them. Philly fans were convinced they were getting Myles Garrett. That worked out how it worked out. We were convinced we were getting him too, so to be fair. But that was less realistic. So they end up keeping Zach Bond, which is a hard choice to argue against given the year that he had last year. But we'll see. He better be the guy. And he gave you every reason to believe he was after the way he played last year. He's got to sustain. He's got to sustain it, and he's got to sustain it with what you assume will be significantly less talent on that defensive line. They lost 2 starters there, and in the back end as well, they lose C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who was kind of the attitude of that defense. They lost him to the Texans. They traded him away. There was some kind of squabble with him and Darius Slay, and all of a sudden neither of them end up back. And Darius Slay is also a key contributor on that defense as well. He's gone. And they got Kenyon Green, who, for all the talk of the BS that Washington brings in per Eagles fans, this is one of the worst players in the NFL that you traded C.J. Gardner-Johnson for. So go ahead, rehabilitate the kid, but he's a liability. He's terrible. And if he's your plan at starting guard next year, you've got a real weakness on that defense, on that offensive line. You better do better than that. And I think they will. Howie's that guy. They'll fill the hole.
They've got a good line to begin with. So.
Yeah, you've got a great line to begin with, but that guy's a liability. That's like a guy that makes everybody around him worse. He's terrible. So you've got to have a better plan than that.
So you like the signing?
No, I hate
from a Commander's point of view, you love it.
I love it for us. But as an objective football perspective, I really hate that trade. I hope they can make something out of him for the kid's sake, for his career. But
you know what I'm looking forward to? I've been wanting to say this. Those Eagles-Commanders game next year are going to be so much fun. Like, everyone could talk all the smack they want to talk, but we get to play twice, maybe 3 times again. So those are going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait. And they will be a battle.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. I like our chances. We can make that one.
So do I.
But breaking Kenneth Gainwell comes back. That's huge. Otherwise, not a pretty quiet free agency for the Eagles. This is what happens when you have crazy talented rosters. You're going to lose guys.
More about trying to keep as many of your guys as you can, right?
And you're not going to be able to keep all of them.
Right.
So is what it is. I don't expect that much of a drop-off from Philly next year. But it'll be interesting to watch. You lost some key contributors, but as long as Fangio's coaching that defense, I feel good about what they're going to be able to do. Or maybe not good from a Commander's perspective. Detroit Lions get a B. Some of their signings, they got a good grade for Levi Onwuzurike. Levi O comes back on a 1-year prove-it deal. Not a ton going on here in Detroit Lions land in terms of big-name signings, but they got a B for bringing back some of their guys, so it should be pretty similar. I think the biggest thing for the Lions defense is going to be getting Hutchinson back healthy, hopefully next year, and hopefully he can get back to the pace that he was on to start the year, because he's just such a dog.
Working their way through the coaching turnover, right?
Yeah. Oh, DJ Reed is the big. That's the big signing there.
3 years, 48.
He said it was between him and Washington. Washington never made an offer, so I don't know where he got that from, but he signed with Detroit. So that's an interesting one. That's another one. He was in that Javon Holland category for me, where I wasn't super excited about bringing him in if we were going to pay him what he was going to command, but I would have trusted it, and he didn't end up coming here. He ends up going to Detroit.
They showed him as the top available corner, so for what it's worth.
I didn't think the corner class was great, and there were some other guys I preferred. But good for them. Hopefully that works out. He's a good player, like to see if he fits in their system, and we're gonna see what their system is with all the coaching turnover, like Pop
Now
talked
they're
about.
super high on this next team.
Vikings got an
Super
A
high.
plus. Javon Hargrave, that was a name a lot of guys thought we were gonna bring in. We did not. We opted for Kinlaw instead. But good veteran presence at defensive tackle there. Harrison Smith, more veteran presence. He's kind of like a Bobby Wagner on their defense. Got another 1 year deal. Kind of veteran leader, safety, still plays at a high level even though he's old. They brought in Will Freeze. They brought in Jonathan Allen, our boy. It's gonna hurt to see him in purple. I'll be honest. They managed to bring back Byron Murphy Jr.
At least he went to a team we respect. They don't seem overly high on that one. They kind of got it as an average.
Average grade. It's a lot of average grades across the board here for Minnesota.
So what brings them to an A plus? Be nice if they gave you like a little summary here.
I don't know. Somebody at PFF.
They like the center, I guess. Ryan Kelly. They like him a lot.
Yeah, I'm not super high on Minnesota going into next year. To be honest with you, I can't.
So they're running. They're running it. I mean, always the headline is quarterback, right? So they're running it with JJ McCarthy, pretty much penciled in as the starter,
which I think is the right choice.
Risky,
you got to hand the keys over to the kid at some point, man. You paid a first round pick for him. You're gonna go get Aaron Rodgers. Like, I mean, come on, you gotta let the kid play. It is risky, but you paid the 13th overall pick for him. I think, didn't they trade up to get him? Something like that. So
I don't remember.
I don't know. You got to make it happen. But going through, Pop's got the Kansas City Chiefs in here as well. I guess they're always a relevant team to discuss. They get a B minus, bolstering up a cornerback. They add Elijah Mitchell, running back. Just scanning through this real quick. Marquise Brown re-signed there, which a lot of people thought he was going to hit the open market, but with all the Xavier Worthy controversy that's going on, there's some legal stuff he's in. So I think they had to kind of pivot real quick and get Brown locked up because you don't know what the deal with Worthy's going to be going forward. Then you've got, who else? You've got Nick Bolton re-signs there. That's a guy I would have loved to hit the open market and sign, but it didn't happen. And then they kept Trey Smith in-house.
Yeah, it seemed like they made an effort to try to improve the offensive line with, keeping Trey Smith, who's highly regarded, signing tackle Jalen Moore, who doesn't get a great PFF grade, but I've heard positive things about that signing, otherwise.
Yeah.
So
they also traded Joe Thuney, who was their star guard for years. And I will say this. When Andy Reid calls for a trade, we've learned this the hard way. You say, "Hey, Andy, any good cheeseburgers in the area? Thanks. I'll talk to you later," and you hang up. You don't answer the phone when Andy Reid tries to trade you a guy because he just doesn't seem to miss.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I think it's an interesting story in terms of what to expect from the Chiefs. Obviously, had a great record. A lot of people thought it was, fraudulent in a way because they won a lot of close games and a lot of them in a unexpected way. But the Chiefs are the Chiefs. I mean, they still got Pat. Just feels like they need some more weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for what it is worth, they don't have the trade on here, I guess, because he didn't get a new deal or whatever. I just quickly checked for Chicago. They got an A minus, so that's interesting. Even with making that Thuney trade, but yeah, not much there else other than just trying to bolster up that line. And then our favorite, the Baltimore Ravens. Add a couple guys. DeAndre Hopkins is just a signature Baltimore Ravens signing. I don't know. Let's see if he can get more. I think he just is.
I know I talked to our insider, and I know there's some optimism about DeAndre, but I mean, if you couldn't get it done in Kansas City, it just feels like you don't get much. I mean, I'm not digging at Baltimore. I'm just saying, if you look at Kansas City, you don't get much of a better quarterback to work with, an offensive
and less competition
right?
at wide receiver. less competition at receiver there.
I mean, he was supposed to be a splash signing for them, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if he couldn't earn reps over Marquise Valdez-Scantling, I don't see how he ends up being a super impactful player here. But fine, you bring in a veteran wide receiver with some upside. I mean, this is to me like for 1 year, $6 million. I mean, that's about what we signed. That's about what we signed Michael Gallup to. So if you think he can get something out of him, that's great. This doesn't move the needle for me at all.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, finish up here.
That's it. That was.
Well, they re-signed Staley, but what really, which I think is great. We wanted Ronnie Staley, so good for
great value there too. It seems like he took a hometown discount to stay there. So,
great job keeping him in the building. Like,
the salary cap bump definitely
super smart.
This one. Yeah,
but there's 2 players listed here. Now I don't know if there's 2 players listed here because those are the only 2 moves they made. But that's all PFF lists. So it's a really quiet free agency period overall for the Ravens. They're running it back, clearly.
Yeah.
Right? They're running it back.
And I mean, in their defense, there were a lot of games last year where there were a lot of weeks last year where you made arguments that they're the best team in football, and it was hard to argue against. Yep. They were right up there. I think defensively they still have some room to improve. I think offensively you're leaning on likely taking that next step because I think Andrews is probably a little bit past his prime, but I don't know. He showed up at times last season, but yeah, it's going to be interesting with the Ravens. Is an interesting thing to watch.
Well, it's an interesting contrast when we talk about the Commanders. We talked about a lot this on Monday's episode, but like how the philosophy of where they're adding a lot of these 1-year deals and a lot of these vets, because that's kind of the position it is. It seems like the Ravens are in a position where they have a great team and they're going to bank on adding key pieces in the draft, right? I think that's what you're thinking. What I'm thinking anywhere.
Well, to that point, this is where there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? There's one 12-5 team makes it to the NFC Championship game with a rookie quarterback and a lot of vets. This is the approach you got to take when you have that situation. You have another 12-5 team and they're 12-5 Washington is in year 1, right? You have another 12-5 team that's in year 5 or 6. They're paying this quarterback $250 million, and they're a drop away from an AFC Championship game. They should have been there. They're a drop away from an AFC Championship game. So 2 teams basically make it to the same point in the year, same records, and this team has $250 million on the quarterback and has been building this situation for a while. This is more typical of what their offseason is going to look like. This is what it should look like in year 6 or 7 of building.
11.
That's great. Yeah,
they have at least one in each round. They got 2 in the 4th. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 6th, and then
that's
the 7th round pick.
That's a team that should draft a running back. That's a team that's going to draft a running back, in my opinion, or should, because how much longer is Henry the ageless wonder? That's a team that should draft. You saw what an elite running back can do. I think they should draft a running back in the 2nd round. They should draft one early. They won't, or Ravens fans will get on me for that, but you should get ahead of that because you saw how much an elite running back can expand your team. And this guy
will probably go heavy on defense would be my guess.
I think they should too. And they need pass rush. They need pass rush. That's a concern there. So
we need a comment from the insider on this one.
Does that sound familiar? But yeah, overall,
well, they pick ahead of us too, so they could take an edge off the board.
They probably
might be targeted. Yeah,
we're
27th, we're 29th.
But to my point, basically, this is what their offseason should look like at this point because I think they're pretty much there roster-wise. They just got to do it. So at this point, like I said, several years into building this roster, I think this is about where things should be for them. I wouldn't have made the Hopkins signing. I would have leaned more towards like a Cup personally, but who knows? But this is what it should look like. They should be looking to re-rack it, and because I think they probably beat Kansas City if they see them in the championship game. And then you might be talking about a whole different. I don't think anybody was beating Philly, but you could be talking about a whole different situation for them.
Yeah, they got to start faster and try to get that home field advantage. I think that would be a big boost for their contending chances.
Yep. Yeah, they
can't afford that slow start.
0-2 start. Yeah. But hey, man, let's wrap this thing up. It's been a good time. We'll see how all these things pan out. Without further ado, I've been Dom.
This is Pop.
Thanks for another great week, everybody, and hail to the Commanders.
Hail.